them because I don't leave, but
Got it.
definitely
Yeah.
involved in the process. I appreciate you letting me know.
All right. Yeah, yeah, of course. So, I guess homework. I had a little bit of homework. I had to do the supplemental text. So I've got a PR open for that. Let me paste this in the chat window, and then I'll share my screen in just a bit as well. It's fairly elementary, so we'll just review this real quick, and then we will shift gears over toward the spreadsheet that Ian put together with all the definitions, and we'll try to get some consensus on those definitions if we can. Let's see. This is the pull request, and last time we talked, we had a need, especially for PCI and a few other standards, to add supplemental text. Is there any opinions one way or the other with this pull request?
I think one thing that we had discussed, and again, my memory is a little fuzzy here. We had talked about their supplemental text being a list of potential items. So you could have like,
Oh, yeah.
so that might be one thing to include.
Yeah. All right. I will change that. All right. Let's go to the attestations then, or the descriptions then. So the items in black, these are existing definitions. The items
Correct. That's
in
what I pulled it.
blue, okay, the blue are your proposals.
Correct. And then items in red, I thought were good discussion topics. Maybe the ones in red would be the first area to start with.
Okay.
I think everyone else can review the blue offline too. So the first red item was on line 26. So in the attestations, we list targets. And I think there's kind of like indirect linkage already to targets through claims. Claims also have targets on them. So you have an attestation pointing to a claim that points to a target. Is there value in also having attestations point directly to targets? I see an opportunity for discrepancies where claims may say I'm pointing to one thing, attestation points to something different. Which one do you believe?
I was thinking that the targets for an attestation would be a subset of the target of the whole thing. Right. So like you might have a specific claim, a specific attestation that targets, I don't know, like some subset of it, like the logging subsystem or something. And then that logging subsystem will be part of the overall target.
So the target was, I'm looking at the example. There's a SSDF example. In an SSDF, you can attest to a product family, which is just basically multiple products, or you can attest to like the entire organization. And so for targets, it was, what is it that we're actually attesting to? Like, what is that higher level thing? Are we making an attestation against the entire company or a specific version of a product? And then you said claims, right?
Yeah, so if you look under
claims has target. Right. And
I see what
claim,
you're saying, Ian. I see what you're saying. You're saying that the claim has a target and the attestation should be against the claim, which already has a target. So why would yeah. I got it now. And I think I agree. Maybe we should nuke that.
I don't know. Let's see.
You can have multiple attestations for one claim. Is that true?
You can have
it's the other way
multiple
around.
Yeah.
You can have multiple claims on an attestation, at least how we have it structured. In the mapping, there's a single requirement and multiple claims, and that becomes your attestation.
Yeah.
So you look at the mappings on 28.
Right. So here's like the SSDF example that we had, and attestations has targets, and that is an array. And in this example, we had like Acme Inc. And I'm sorry, I should probably make this text bigger.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So this was an array, and we had like Acme Inc. as the target for this particular attestation. And then, of course, the attestation is basically has a group of requirements and claims. Then the claims, it also has a target, but it is basically just a string. It is not an array, and that we designed that on purpose.
So if you had multiple targets defined, then this would have to be one of them?
What's that?
If you had like multiple targets defined, like for the whole organization, because you said the one up above is a list, right?
Right.
So you got a list of targets. Does the target in a attestation, in a below, sorry,
Claim.
in this claim, does that target have to be one of the targets defined above?
No, these are just bomb refs. So different parts. So these are supposed to be, what are these supposed to be?
A bomb ref to down below, there are target listed as
Right.
in the targets elements.
Right.
So I'd expect to be
Right.
bomb refs.
So then the question is, this thing in red, is this needed since targets are included in claims too? So the question is declarations, attestations, targets. So the question is, let me go back to my editor. Ian is asking if this is even, was it that? Yeah. I think it was that,
Correct.
wasn't it? He's asking if this is even needed.
Is that, like, could you calculate that if you went through all the claims and made a list of all the targets?
That was my thought.
Yeah,
I think a follow-on would be is, okay, up above, we have it as a list. And then for individual claims, we have it as a specific target. Should that be a list of targets under line 97? Can a claim reference multiple targets? Or
So
would you
how
rather
does
see
that work?
multiple claims?
Would you say, like, I don't know, these three modules or these three teams all have been trained, and so the targets are team 1, team 2, and team 3? I could imagine
Yeah.
something like that.
Well,
And
you can kind of do it up here though too. So, well, it
no,
wouldn't be a claim though. It's part of the attestation.
The
But
other part of it is the way targets are structured today. It's one target, but within that, there's like a list of organizations. There's a list of contacts. There's a list of components. So you could have a single target of target type, and then in that target, you can have like lists of things. So you could still have a single target here, but that target then kind of branches out and points to a whole bunch of stuff. It may be easier if we look at the
Yeah.
if it's not here, maybe in the spec. But a target is just a grouping of other lists of things. A target doesn't mean
it doesn't really make sense to have a list of targets then. Is there like a nested target where you can make a target that has other targets in the list?
hold on. Am I looking at the wrong thing? Let's see.
What are you
Crap.
doing, Ian and Jeff? How do you define a target?
It's kind of what we're arguing about.
A target being the thing that you are attesting about. So there's some
It's actually the thing that you're
quality.
claiming about, right?
Yeah. Good point.
It's like something that you want to make a claim about. Like I want to make a claim about a product or a team or a module or a process or something. It's the subject of the claim. The predicate is like the part of the claim that makes the statement about that about that
Got
target.
it.
We're calling it a target, but it's really subject predicate, right? It's the subject.
Got it. That makes sense to me now. Appreciate it. I was like a little confused. It's my first time joining this conversation live, so it's fantastic to know how I can process this.
Well, this is how the sausage gets made.
Yeah, right.
I mean, this is here to poke holes in it. So if maybe subject is a better phrasing, like that's something to consider. Like,
Why is this? It's giving me problems here. It's not
Again,
pulling up.
I don't want to derail the conversation, but I wanted to know, we have a specification already defined properly for this sort of attestation model?
Yes.
Or are we making it as we go? Like,
Well,
there's
but
a draft specification
There's a draft.
that we are poking the holes in and figuring out where the holes are in it and reworking the spec as we go through it.
awesome, yeah.
And this thing is not updating for some reason. I don't know why.
I'll pull it up and put that in the chat. Ricardo, so you
Right
can see it.
now, I'm looking. Okay, here we go. I was looking at the wrong branch. So let's go to the 1.6 branch first of all. Okay, so declarations, requirements, and then I'm looking for attestations, right?
Targets, I think is what we're talking about.
Oh, targets, assessors, attestations. Targets is an array here, and then I'm just making sure that this is still accurate. And then claims has a target, which is a string. Okay, just making sure it's the same.
Can you pull up the target definition of what that element is?
What's that?
Can you put the target element where that scheme is defined? Yeah, so this is the part that so it's a list, and each one of the elements then contains another list of organizations, contacts, components, services.
Right.
So I think, Jeff, kind of going to your point, should a claim point to a single target, and that single target then branches out to all the different things it could point to as a group? Or should a claim have a list of targets that all point to these other lists of other things?
I kind of like it the second way because it makes the claim simpler. Like, you know, I'm going to call whatever I'm claiming about, I'm going to call that one thing. I'm going to call it Steve. And then I'm going to make claims about that thing. And, you know, it's easier to think of Steve rather than, I don't know, claiming Steve's head. And I don't know. There's a bad analogy to head down, but
I claim that I sound like Kermit the Frog.
right. I was going to say disastrously overworked, something like that.
That too. So have we identified a need for a change then?
Well, the original thing that I think Ian brought up was, do we need to have a set of targets at the attestation level?
Right.
Which I'm starting to think, like, if you just add up all the targets in the claims, you'll get that list.
Right.
And I'm worried that if they're out of sync, then I don't know what that means.
Yeah, because the well,
What if there's a target in there that there's no claim about? Or vice versa? I just don't know what to do with that.
so let me let's see.
It might be useful. I think the point of that was to have in one place a description of what this attestation is really targeting.
Yeah,
So
that
like
way you can apply a digital signature to it.
yeah, so we just need, maybe it's a description of the targets that belongs here. Like what is this collection of targets called together? Is it called Microsoft Word, or is it called Lockheed Martin, or whatever? I don't know.
Right.
But if it was a description, then I could see signing that description and having that locked in.
Yeah, because I mean, your attestation includes the map. The map includes the claims. A claim includes a target. Now, should the claim be an array of targets? Should this right here replace the target in a claim?
Well, what Ian was describing a second ago, I think, and forget, correct me if I get this wrong, Ian, but he was saying a target is already sort of a set of things. It's got other lists in it, right?
Correct.
So maybe it doesn't make sense to have a list of targets. Why don't you just call that list of things a target?
Right, which is what it's called today. So, because the claim, claim includes a target.
Yeah, it has to have a target and a predicate. That's like, to me, that's like subject predicate. That's like, you don't want to have a subject's predicate. I think that would just be confusing to people who are familiar with
Right.
logic.
Right. Right.
Yeah, my vote would be to remove target from the attestation. And if you're trying to figure out what they are, you traverse the claims and find all of the targets there. I think what Jeff is kind of like hinting at, where like, hey, one target points to a whole bunch of stuff. That makes sense. And then therefore there should only be a single target to a claim. That'd be how I'd say reconcile this. I think what you have is all good, but I would remove the targets from the attestation and rely on a traversal of claims to figure out what they all are.
Right.
How did you feel about having a description of the collection of targets in the attestation level?
So
I'd see
instead
that.
of this, the description.
Because otherwise you're going to get a list of claims and they're going to have more specific targets. They're going to be like, Microsoft development team XYZ got training, and you know, this component was tested for vulnerabilities with contrast, and this other thing was built by, I don't know, somebody in Korea. I don't know, like it feels like you want to have a description of like, what are all the targets together? What do we call that? We call it Microsoft Office 365 or something.
So you're saying, Jeff, like the entire product and then figuring
Yeah.
out components of the product.
Well, remember this standard's pretty flexible. It's you could use this to create attestations about almost anything, a car or a nursery school or whatever. Like it's really flexible that way. But yeah, in general, what we're thinking about generally is like using it on a software product, right? So like that's typically you'd want to say, hey, this is everything having to do with Microsoft 365.
And that's what I'm trying to process it too, right, Ian? Like the way you're saying it is 1-to-1, right? Proportion, like it's one attestation action for one component, right? That's what you're thinking?
Well,
Or-
there's a one to many with claims. So an attestation may have multiple claims, and then each claim has a one-to-one to targets. So a attestation may have multiple targets if you traverse the list of claims. I think, Jeff, you bring up a good point, which is like, there's more like the UX side of things, right? As an end user, I look at a CycloneDX SBOM and I just like manually read it. You bring up a great point, which is I look at attestation, I wanted to have like that human readable wording what it is. I guess on the converse side of that though, is knowing that a lot of this will be auto-generated. Is there someone who's actually going to have a human readable description summarizing the targets for an attestation?
I mean, someone on the team ought to know roughly what they're building. Like, I don't know, you'd think they'd have it wouldn't be that hard to say like, this is related to this particular product or whatever. Even if you just put a product name in there, that would be sufficient for most use cases, I would think. But if you were doing a nursery school, you could just say, hey, this is the Tiny Tots Nursery School on Brookville Street, whatever. I don't feel bad about making humans do that one thing.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Will they actually be different? And will you actually be able to calculate? I'm going to throw this out as an example because we've used it in the past. My developers require yearly security training. That would be an organizational thing that I would target, not necessarily to a product. Now, I might be attesting to the product, but that claim is against the organization that produces the product, not the product itself.
Yeah, I guess, ultimately all the claims are against a bunch of different things, but they're probably mostly about the people, processes, and technology that went into creating that thing, right? Or the thing itself. There could be claims about the actual thing itself. I would expect most claims to fall into those buckets. And I guess if I said Office 365, I mean the product, but I also mean the people, process, and technologies that went into creating it. I mean, we could make that clear in the description of the field if we wanted to include a sort of a text description of what that attestation is about.
Let's leave this as an open item, I guess, because I don't think we're going to come to any clear decision one way or another until we actually start diving in and actually using the spec that we just built. Has anybody done that yet? Has anybody done that exercise? Not yet. Okay. I haven't either, but we're about ready to start doing it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, Steve, I was going to ask if I were to run this today, right? The current attestation with this code, would I be able to generate a report on a product or a component or the whole everything? Where are we now?
Depending on what you're attesting to, I mean, you can basically recreate an entire standard. So if you wanted to recreate PCI or recreate SSDF or BSIM or whatever, you can recreate those standards in a machine readable format. And we actually have them in the BOM examples repo, except for the PCI. That's kind of a work in progress. You should be able to use the attestations part of the spec now to attest to the requirements in a given standard. That's kind of the exercise that we're kind of going through now. So you should be able to, for example, if you wanted to do SSDF for your organization, you should be able to do that today.
Great. Okay. I'll be able to test that then.
Yeah. Or ASVS or OWASP SAM or, whatever. Yeah, you should be able to do those today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, sorry, one final comment. I guess what I'm hearing from you, Jeff, is that targets is maybe not the best wording here. Maybe it's really just like a description of the attestation. Like, can you summarize the attestation? Like we have description in other places in the spec.
Yeah. In fact, there is a description like on 288 right there.
Well, that's the description of this particular attestations array. That's not
Yeah.
an actual thing. So we don't have like a summary type of thing, right? A summary text field might actually be useful.
Yeah.
And your idea is to generate a summary based on like the components that were evaluated, or
Yeah,
how,
I mean, you could.
how would that be, I guess, created by the software here, by the tool? Or would that be something that would just be human driven somehow? Because you want it
Yeah,
somewhere.
today there's no tool to generate these, right? It's all by hand. We got a spec that says what the output's supposed to look like, but we don't have a
Yeah.
I can
And
imagine
each-
there's going to be a bunch of things in this that are going to require human input. Like,
Right. Well, it has an assessor.
yeah,
So an attestation requires an assessor.
Oh,
So it
wow.
requires a person.
So this
or
is the
organization.
crawl process right now. Dude, we're just crawling at this point, right? Like this is the beginning stages, trying to figure out how do we get something out.
Yeah, but I think we're doing it in a way where I think we're hitting all the use cases. We started off with a original Google Doc with a bunch of questions that we wanted to answer, and everything from SSDF and OWASP standards and PCI to things like underwriter laboratories where there's a bunch of testing and evidence to just contracts, right?
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
appreciate you answering my questions. Yeah, I know they're very basic, and I'm
No,
like,
no, it's
I know.
it's all good.
I hope I'm not repeating myself or repeating other people's questions. I hate that.
It's good to poke holes. Coming in with a fresh set of eyes is good, because we've talked about this now several months, so we can definitely talk ourselves in a circle.
Yeah, because I had a meeting with NIST this morning about the same subject, right? At the station. And obviously they created the SSDF, right? So the bottom line is they have their own little community that they've created with industry, right? In terms of how they plan to sort of create a process in which they can do attestation and poke holes on their SSDF as well, right? In terms of whether they hit all the standards. So I'm trying to figure out, are you guys also involved with that community? If so, how are you collaborating, right? Or sharing that best practices,
Yeah, we're just getting started. Steve and I have a meeting with Ron Ross and some folks from his team that are interested in how we think about attestation, but we'll see where it goes from there.
No, and this is a lot of work you guys have put in. I've read some of the project code, and I'm like, that's a lot. So it's hard to process as the first time coming, like, looking at the entire source and how much work has been put together already. But I think when I'm coming in, I'm trying to see if I'm going to be, let's say, a SaaS provider, right? And I got to do attestation on my software and provide that report to the government agency who wants it, let's say. How would I use this now, right? And you're saying that it's a human element and it's machine driven actions, right? So that's the combination of two. And where is the stopgap, right? How do we get the human to interact with what's being produced systematically? I think that's what I'm trying to process right now. And how would that work? How would seamlessly, right? Without having to like use a terminal or use the command line to like inject data in and out. So I think that's what I'm at this point.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question.
There could be some requirements that you can answer with automatically generated evidence. So, is this thing clean when tested by some kind of tool? But there's going to be plenty of requirements that are not automatable. I went through ASVS, And I think about half the requirements there are not really automatable. They're like, did you build a security architecture diagram? Stuff like that. And like, you're just going to have to answer those manually until there's a way of like, automating that process.
I agree with that. I think that's what I'm seeing as well. It's early stages, right? So, but you guys, I feel like you're leading the way.
But I think actually one of the keys to unlocking automation is to create a spec like this so that we can communicate about it. Like this is what'll drive people to automate the answer. But it is kind of putting the horse after the cart or the cart before the horse, whatever. Like you got to have the communications format before you have any way to generate what you want to say. But that's fine. It's been working.
Looks good. Like I said, I'm going to test it out this week and report back hopefully next week if I don't have a conflict in this meeting.
That's amazing. I would love to get your feedback because none of us have actually dogfooded the spec yet.
You said you're doing SSDF?
Not me. I was saying like I was on a call with NIST, one of the co-authors of the SSDF, and they also have a working group community that focuses on, they're going to focus on attestation per se. And they're
Oh,
trying to
that's great.
figuring out gaps on that. In fact, let me find the article, the website in which they reference this community, where it's open to the public. You have to apply to be part of that community, and they vet you, and there's the commitment level that they're looking for, and they're going to be focusing on topics like attestation and many other things about the NIST standards, right? With like 800 plus, 858, 53 RMF process and things like that, artifacts, and create an entire supply chain security process,
Ugh, that sounds awful. I'm just kidding. But
there's-
it's great that you're going to be a liaison to that group. Like it would be great for them to know about what we're doing, and hopefully Steve and I can also make a dent over there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be. We are applying as a company, right? We can be invited to attend that community because I feel like it'll serve them for more technologies and capabilities that we have with open source. So that's where our mission is.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw my hand in. I'd love to see what that process looks like to apply. We're pretty heavily invested also, like a lot of folks are. I'd love to be involved. I did put a link in the chat. This is like the link to our rough draft of what the SSDF looks like in this spec. So yeah, definitely put calls in it. I think the next item that I hadn't read was under conformance versus confidence. It's a minor nitpick, but confidence is an element with sub-elements for score and rationale. Conformance is a top level item, and then we don't really have a rationale for it. And then we also have like mitigation strategy as like an element at the same level as conformance. It kind of seems like conformance should be an element with sub-elements for mitigation strategy, rationale, and score, just for consistency between the two. It's really minor nitpick.
Okay, let me pull back the spec then. Okay. That was under what again? That was under
Conformance.
Yeah, map. Okay.
Yeah.
Map, and then you've got the conformance, which is a 0 to 1 number, and then you've got the mitigation strategy, right?
Correct. And that mitigation strategy, I kind of looked at it as what's the mitigation strategy for any shortcomings on the conformance. And then just below that on line 330 or 346, you have confidence, which then is one element that has like sub elements. And it kind of seemed very similar, and you probably want to treat them kind of the same. They're quantities. They represent different things, but the quantities with the rationale probably for why you gave that number. And if there's a difference, then you have mitigation strategy on conformance. It's an organizational thing. It's very minor nitpick.
So you're saying the mitigation strategy should be under conformance?
That was my thought. And likewise, there's a rationale for confidence. There's not a rationale for conformance. Does there
That
need to be
makes
one?
sense.
So you're saying, okay, I think I see what you're saying. So you're looking at it just from the structure perspective, not questioning confidence and conformance,
Correct.
right? Okay, all right. So let me see if I understand. So you basically want conformance to look more like this, where you have a numerical thing, you have a rationale, and you have the mitigation strategy underneath it. Is that
Correct.
the way you're looking at it?
Correct.
Okay. Conformance, score, rationale, mitigation strategy.
So conformance would tell me something like, if there's 100 requirements and I feel like I've got great support for 60 of them, then I get a 60 conformance or a 0.6 conformance, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a 0.6 conformance, and then if I'm only 0.6, then I need a mitigation strategy because I got 0.4 to go. So I should talk about that and say like, I'm going to fix this with this roadmap or whatever. And then confidence is like, but I'm only 70% sure of that 60% conformance, right?
Yeah. Like
So
I am
the
100% sure. I am 100% sure that only half of my developers get yearly security training. Just making this up, by the way.
Yeah, no, really.
But you know, yeah. So I could be 100% confident in something and have like 0.5 confidence.
Right. I guess what I'm asking is my confidence in my conformance? Like, and if so, isn't it, shouldn't it be under conformance as well? Like,
Well, this is all about the attestation itself. So
right, so look at this attestation.
it has a requirement, it has a claim, counterclaim, conformance, mitigation strategy, confidence.
So wait a minute, hold on, let me just, I want to drill into conformance here for a second. I've got one claim I'm talking about here.
This is the map. A map can have multiple things within an attestation.
Okay, so this is about all the claims.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That makes it easier. It's not about talking about one claim at a time. So I've got all my claims and I'm attesting to my conformance of all those claims. So what I said before was right. I'm 60% conformant with all these claims, and I'm 70% sure of that.
Right.
Whew.
I think the description's throwing me off there. The conformance to a requirement.
Yeah,
Are we talking about a requirement or the collection?
It should be this attestation, conformance to this whole attestation, right?
No, it's about this particular requirement. So you're attesting to something, and that something
Oh, that's right.
is this requirement, these claims in support of that requirement. That's what this is referring to.
Man, are we sure this shouldn't be like a binary, like it's either you're conformant or not?
No, because then
percentages of percentages start to get kind of silly. Like if I'm 60% of a 70%, like, I don't know, what does that make me?
I think Steve's example
Non-conforming.
earlier. I think Steve's example though, where I'm 100% certain that 50% of my developers have taken XYZ security training is like a good example.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, these are two, conformance and confidence are two complementary concepts. So Ian's question is, should the confidence or should the conformance property look more like the confidence, where we have the score, the rationale, the mitigation strategy? I think he's right.
I would think so.
Yeah, I think he's right.
In your mind, who would be the actual assessor of this? Who would be the person validating this? The security officer of the program, like an ISO?
Could be a lot of different rules.
Yeah, that's why we have a signatories thing, and we support, I think, digital signatures, analog signatures, a couple other things.
It could be HR, it could be developers, it could be a CI/CD pipeline.
Yeah,
Bunch of things could generate these.
yeah, and the assessor could be a tool, right? It doesn't have to be a person.
We should make that clear in the description.
We should, which is why we're going through the descriptions.
Right.
But we wanted to highlight the things in red first, and this is the only other thing in red, Ian? No, you've got
So
the-
minor things. The next one's
Okay.
pretty easy. Evidence is a list. I hate to say evidences, which is, I guess, proper English, or both are supported. I just hear evidence from like user perspective, and I think a single entity versus a
okay,
list.
right. A list of
Then the other,
evidence. Okay.
yeah. And then the other thing was, we are still missing the signatories. And then in our example, in signatories, we don't have an organization. So a signatory is going to be signing on behalf of an organization, but we don't capture that in signatories.
Okay.
So I think we need to add the signatory section, and then in our example that we put together, it's missing kind of like an organization.
All right.
On the Google Doc, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's that.
Yeah, I see that. All right.
And then also, I didn't understand what the affirmation text was used for. I know we talked through it. I just, in the structure, I didn't see where it was going to fall.
What text? The affirmation.
Yeah, there's an affirmation dot text.
Yeah. Affirmation, which is under targets. So we had organizations, contacts, components, services, and then
It fell in the same level as like targets and evidence and claims and attestations. So I wasn't sure what it was representing at that level in the structure.
I know we talked about this
I know.
at great length. I'm gonna have to go back to one of the previous recordings.
Okay.
But I believe this was basically the case of a use case, like as a CEO. This would be like text where I, to the best of my ability, truthfully declare the following to be accurate and truthful statements with a signature. That I thought was the affirmation.
So based on what you just said, should that be under like a signatory section, or is that at the same level as targets and evidence and attestations? So you're gonna write that statement and then sign it as a signatory. So should it
Right.
maybe be under a signatory instead of that higher level? How do you tie who has stated that affirmation when it's signatory is there's no correct linkage between those two?
Right. And we're missing signatories right now from the spec, right?
Correct.
So we're going to have to revisit that next week. I guess we got homework for next week. All right. Yeah. How do we miss signatories? I think we have it. You know what? I think it might be in one of our examples. And then I probably did not move it over. So that's probably on me. But yeah, we'll go through that next time because I don't know the answer to that question, Ian. All right. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make the change to so we've got summary right here. I'll make the change. We've got 5 minutes left. I guess I can try to do it right now. Where was it?
I think a question would be is we talked about maybe revisiting, maybe we can make a decision. The summary, can we remove targets from attestation or not? Or are we going to have targets and that summary for an attestation?
Right.
Yeah, I like where we were headed there, removing it.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll remove that conformance, and this is okay. So I believe this is what you were kind of trying to communicate, Ian. You've got a conformance object that then has a score, numerical score of the conformance. You've got rationale of that conformance, and you've got a mitigation strategy.
Yeah.
And then we were going to remove this, right?
That'd be my vote.
All right. And then signatories, that is a gap that we probably need to discuss. I don't want to necessarily do anything. I want to figure that out as a group because I don't know the answer to that. But what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and check this in. And then I need to redo the pull request and make the supplemental text an array. So I will do that as well. Let me go ahead and check this in right now.
That's how we do it, Ricardo. Steve just does shit right live.
Hey, no better time than now, right?
I can't think of any
Yeah.
other working groups I'm on where things actually happen.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's so welcome.
No, I like this. This is great.
Yeah. All of our other working groups, by the way, Ricardo, yeah, we do the same thing. That's how we did the ML stuff. It's how we're going to start doing the cryptography stuff, which starts, I think, on Thursday. So, yeah.
I love it.
Do you also volunteer with Oasis there, Steve? I mean, you
What's-
seem to have a lot of background for everything.
What's
Do you
that?
work with Oasis? In any
I
way?
don't. I've never attended any of the OASIS working groups.
I do. I'm part of the Serif team, and it's much more formal.
Formal invitations?
I mean, just they run the meetings formally. You have to have quorum. There's like voting rules. If you miss 2 meetings, you can't vote on stuff. It's more like, you know, Roger's rules of order or whatever. Like it's that stuff.
Very governmental like structure.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. OWASP is
Okay.
less strict about stuff.
I like the startup mentality here, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, we're all busy. There's more problems in the world than just than software bill of materials. So I mean, it's important, but there's other things that we need to work on too. So
I think we do need to work on the descriptions of these fields a bit. Like, I feel like, you know, the description of conformance is like the conformance to a requirement. I don't know. It's a little self-referential. Like, I think we should zoom up a level and help people understand why. Like, what is this really measuring?
Right.
Do you have a data dictionary somewhere on the GitHub project?
That's
Fine.
actually what we started the meeting working with, right? Like the descriptions of all these fields is the data dictionary.
So I know we've got like 1 minute left. There's a couple well, there's actually several, I guess, definitions in the Google Doc and the spreadsheet that define something using the thing that we're trying to define. Conformance is one of those things. So I think the issue might extend beyond just this one field, Jeff. So we might want to consider either alternative language or expanded language so that we are providing a little bit of guidance on actually how to use the field.
Yeah.
All right.
Because I mean, we're having discussions about this stuff among this team. I think the broader community is going to struggle to catch up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got to jump.
Yeah,
Thanks.
me too. Take care, all.
Anybody
Cheers.
go to Black Hat, by the way? No Black Hats? Okay,
Not for me this year.
I'll let you know how it goes.
All right. Don't get COVID.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Hey, everyone.
Take it easy.
All right.